Do you have a game you come back to every now and again from your childhood? For me, one of those games is a Japanese role-playing game called Suikoden. Suikoden is the creation of Yoshitaka Murayama and was published by Konami back when they were still involved in gaming, though they have came back recently. The first game came out in December of 1996 in America. There are 5 games in the main series with one spin-off called Suikoden Tactics, which was related to Suikoden 4. There are also 2 other games called Suikoden Tierkreis and Suikoden The Woven Web of a Century, the latter of which never got a Western release, and both games are unrelated to the main series. Suikoden is the Japanese pronunciation of Shui Hu Xuan, and I probably butchered that, but both words translate to Water Margin. Water Margin was a Chinese novel in which 108 outlaws rebelled against the government. I never read it, and from what I understand, the game is very loosely related to it. Murayama would then go on to create Suikoden 2, which is widely regarded by fans to be the best game in the series, and Suikoden 3, which he left during the end of development. He was not involved in Suikoden 4 or 5. So back in the day, I didn't have much experience with Japanese role-playing games or role-playing games in general, and before Suikoden, my first Japanese role-playing game I ever played was Phantasy Star 4 for the Sega Genesis. And despite that game being pretty foreign to me, I found the gameplay, art style, and story intriguing. So fast forward a little bit, the Sega Genesis was approaching the end of its lifespan, and we ended up getting a PS1 instead of a Sega Saturn. And I remember going to the Blockbuster with my dad to find some PS1 games to rent, and as I was browsing through the list of PS1 games on display, I saw one game's cover art that caught my eye. This cover art right here. And yeah, I know it looks a little silly, but I'll get to that later in the video. I look at the back of the CD case and I was reading the description and looking at the gameplay pictures, and I thought to myself, this game reminds me a little of Phantasy Star 4, just the style of it, the top-down view. So I figure I'll rent it and see if it's any good or not. And I remember going up to the counter with my dad, and the guy behind the counter, he picked up the game before ringing it up and said, "Suikoden. Good game." So I go home, put the game on my PlayStation, played it for a while, and he was right, it is a good game. Whenever I think about Suikoden, I think about my encounter with that Blockbuster guy. So I don't know where he is now, but Blockbuster guy, thank you for letting me know that Suikoden is a good game before I even bought it. As a game, Suikoden has a lot going for it. It had your usual random encounters, buying armor and supplies for your party members, a magic system, dungeon exploration, collectibles, minigames, and a few other features of the game that differentiated itself from other games of that genre. And even though I very much liked the gameplay, I was really engrossed by the story. The story itself was very emotional. It dealt with themes of war, and it wasn't really about saving the world. It was about relationships between characters, dealing with grief, and holding on to hope when all seems lost. And the soundtrack, composed by Miki Higashino, did a wonderful job at accentuating the emotions of each scene in the game, which instills a lot of emotions in the player. I ended up renting the game a couple of times before eventually asking my dad to buy it, and to this day, I have played and owned every main Suikoden game since release. Earlier I mentioned that Suikoden had gameplay features that separated itself from other role-playing games. You can have up to 6 characters in a party, a magic system that works with attaching crystals to your characters which then turn into runes, war battles, one-on-one duels, 108 characters to recruit, and a castle system which grows the more allies join your army, and where you can purchase armor and supplies and talk to your comrades. The party system works like you'd expect, and the battles go quickly. They act out like small skirmishes. You can issue out commands like attack, defense, use items, but a special feature of the party system is that if you have certain characters in your party who mesh well together, they can perform a really powerful attack called Unite attacks, as well as Unite magic depending on the combination of runes you use. The magic system in this game is very simple, but also very fun to use. How it works is that when you find crystals, you need to go to the city's rune master to attach it to a character, but you also might find that certain characters already have runes attached to them, and for some of them, you can't remove them. Not all characters are good with magic. For example, the ones that aren't are good with runes like the Killer Rune, which increases their critical hit rate, and the ones that are, you can choose to use whichever elemental rune you want. For example, if you want a healer in your party, give them the Water Rune. You'll also find rune pieces to attach to your character's weapons. And speaking of weapons, while you can buy armor for your characters, you can't buy weapons. Each weapon is unique to each character, and the only way to improve that weapon is to go to a blacksmith and sharpen it. I find this mechanic in this game to be rather unique, and I haven't really seen any other game replicate it. And honestly, that's a shame, because when you buy a weapon in another role-playing game, I never feel like I'm really attached to that weapon. Whereas in a game like Suikoden, when you look at the character's weapon name, it's like you're seeing a piece of their personality within that weapon, and I wish more games would do that. War battles in this game work like rock, paper, scissors. Charge is strong against bow, bow is strong against magic, and magic is strong against charge. And while it seems a little silly that a war battle will work like a kid's game, you do get 2 assets in your army that'll help you out. One are thieves and one are ninjas, and when you use them in a war battle, they'll let you know what the enemy's next move is going to be. However, with thieves, there's a chance for it to fail, or they come back with money instead, and then from there you would just have to guess what the enemy's next move is going to be, risking the life of one of your stars of destiny. And while I did find the war battles fun as a kid, I do know that this system was kind of criticized as being very simple, like why didn't we get something like Shining Force or Tactics Ogre instead? But I felt like this was the best system they could come up with a game as ambitious as Suikoden back in 95 and 96. But to me, I did feel immersed. I did get the idea that I was fighting a large-scale war to liberate a land from a corrupt empire, so I don't entirely hate it. And in the sequel, we did get something that might have been a little bit better. The one-on-one duels in this game is by far one of my favorite pieces of gameplay in this game. It works just like the war battles, kind of, in the fact that it's like rock, paper, scissors, but you don't have the advantage of a thief or a ninja to help you out this time. Instead, the boss gives you tells and clues through his dialogue, and you have to infer what move he's going to do. So attack is strong against defense is strong against desperate attack, and desperate attack is strong against attack. However, I do have one criticism with the dueling system of the game, and that criticism is that there are only 3 duels in the entire game. I wish there were more of it. In Suikoden, you assume the role of the young master, Tyr McDull. Tyr is the son of Teal McDull, one of 5 great generals of the Empire, a very highly respected leader who is fiercely loyal to the Emperor. When his father is away to defend the border from a neighboring country, Tyr joins the Imperial Guard and is accompanied by his bodyguards, Gremio, Cleo, Pan, as well as his best friend Ted. During Tyr's service to the Empire, he quickly notices that things are not quite right. His superiors are clearly corrupt, the villagers are unhappy, having their food stolen by Imperial soldiers, children are abused, and the overall atmosphere has people disaffected with the current regime. On Tyr's second mission, he and his band are waylaid by a powerful monster in which Ted dispatches it with dark magic. On their way home, Ted is called away to the palace, only to come back gravely wounded. Ted reveals to Tyr that the magic he uses from the Soul Eater rune, one of the 27 true runes, and begs Tyr to take it and keep it safe from the Empire. Immediately, Tyr's home is invaded by Imperial guards and Tyr and his friends are forced to escape. He later makes contact with the Resistance and from here, helps liberate the land from the Scarlet Moon Empire. The story in Suikoden is very interesting, at least for its time. While the game is short at about 16 to 20 something hours, a lot of the story is condensed in very well despite the rapid pace. During the course of Tyr's journey, he will witness the genocide of a race, the death of his friends and comrades, make painful decisions, as well as deal with the consequences of the Soul Eater rune. When I first played the game as a kid, I found myself getting attached to the characters you interact with. Big mistake in a game like this one. As I said, Tyr loses some close friends and companions while leading the Liberation Army, and to top it off, the Soul Eater, like its name implies, eats their souls. During the war, Tyr would witness the death of Odessa, lose his servant and friend Gremio, fight and defeat his own father in one-on-one combat, and watch Ted willingly give his own soul to the Soul Eater in order to prevent Wendy from obtaining it. These scenes are by far the most emotional moments I've ever experienced in video games, and the scenes are further carried by Miki Higashino's score. I'm not in the least bit ashamed to say these scenes, especially Gremio's, had me tearing up as a child, and even today I still find them a little sad. Since Tyr's the new owner of a true rune, the Soul Eater rune will eat the souls of not only the ones closest to him, but also the ones he uses the rune on. At the final war battle of the game, Leknaat tells Tyr that he must never use that rune depending on a dialogue option you choose. I remember as a kid, I always used the Hell spell on enemy soldiers and monsters, and now, I try not to use the rune at all, at least not the instant death ones. Another thing I like about Suikoden are the characters. The characters have a lot of depth to them. You can tell a lot about a character just by looking at their character sprite, portrait, name, weapon name, dialogue. A lot of care was put into these character designs, and even the minor stars of destiny stand out in their own unique way. For example, during the course of the game, you face off against the Imperial Generals. Naturally, since they're on the side of the enemy, you would think they would be typical bad guys who need to be brought down for the good of all. But they have their own personalities and code, not to mention they were also being manipulated by the court magician Wendy anyway. While you do have the option of killing them, they're actually stars of destiny you can recruit, and you better recruit them if you're looking to obtain all the characters. But what I find interesting is that they have their own motivations to join your cause. They're still loyal to the Emperor, but recognize he's not the same man anymore, and still, by being loyal to the Emperor, they're still fighting for the same land they've sworn to protect, even though they defected to your side. It was different from other RPGs I played later on where there was a clear bad guy and you're the good guys. In Suikoden, very few characters are outright evil, and the same can be said for the rest of the series. And while the story may seem tame by today's standards considering its age, I still think the story holds up if you can put yourself in the mindset of experiencing the game for the first time in the 90s. And the game's story and gameplay combined make it perfect for someone who has never played JRPGs before like when I was a kid. Once you get your castle and name it, you're free to hunt for the 108 Stars of Destiny in between story segments and dungeons. Some are easy to get and will flat out just join you if you ask, and some are a little complicated, hidden away in clever areas, and some require slightly annoying backtracking. And even though you can recruit 108 characters, only around 70 of them are actually playable. Some are shopkeepers or hang around your castle for dialogue still. 70 plus is still a large number, and I find that amazing even today. Rarely do games have that many characters to bring into your party. The 108 Stars of Destiny is one of the things that makes Suikoden stand out compared to other role-playing games of its time and even today. And you likely won't be able to find all the characters on your first playthrough unless you consult a walkthrough, and I do not recommend doing that unless you can find a spoiler-free guide. When I played Suikoden as a kid, I wasn't able to get all the Stars of Destiny. I eventually was able to when I asked my dad to buy the strategy guide at the store. You see, back then, we didn't have the internet, and the internet wasn't mainstream until many years later. So it wasn't as easy as just turning on the computer and open up your web browser and going to GameFAQs.com to look up a guide on how to find all the Stars of Destiny. But anyways, I mentioned a guide because there's some odd requirements in order to get some of these certain characters to join you. For example, you read about a cook in an old book who specializes in stews and that he's present at a certain castle. But when you get to the castle and explore it, you find out that he's not even there, so you think, well, okay, maybe the clue is stews, because in the book it says stews. But the problem with that in this game in Suikoden is that only about 10% or so of the furniture in the entire game, including stews, are unexaminable. So you're not sure which stews to examine. So you could be examining every stew in the game and you're still not sure if you triggered the scene or not. But, spoiler alert, you find the 2 stews in the town of Karov in order to trigger the recruitment scene for this cook character. So you go return to the castle and he's still not there, and you're left wondering, well, where is he then? And back then you weren't sure if it was just broken, and you weren't sure exactly the number of stews you need to examine. So your only option now is to go explore every nook and cranny in the game, check every building, check every hidden wall, but spoiler alert, he's actually in the very same town you examined the stews in the central building near the docks, but you're given no clue as to suggest he's supposed to show up there. And in fact, the one clue you do read from the old book says he's supposed to be present at a certain castle. But that's just one example of how difficult it is to get every character in this game. Alright, I'm coming up to the end of the video now, but first I want to talk about some of my criticisms with the game, but not before bringing up the game's cover art. I probably don't even need to say anything, just look at it. I played this game so many times over the years and I can barely tell who some of these characters even are. Starting with the top left, that's probably Emperor Barbarossa, but if the guy below him is supposed to be Kirkus, he doesn't have elven ears, so I don't recognize him. And below him is probably Lady Windy, and off to the right there maybe Lucknot, but if the guy above her is supposed to be Luke, he's way too old, and I definitely don't recognize the naked guy flying Black the Dragon in the background, and if he's supposed to be Futch, he's way too big to be Futch. Futch is 11 years old in this game. The only things I recognize for sure is Torin Castle in the background, Black the Dragon, and the Demon Sorcerer enemy in the bottom right there. But back in the day, they just made cover arts like this, and if they were trying to get my attention, it worked. Back in the day, I found this cover art so ugly, I actually took it out of the jewel case and put the rest of the inserts in a smaller jewel case so I wouldn't have to look at it anymore. A decision I regret now, of course, because I can't show it in the video. Alright, moving on to criticism, and despite the fact that I love this game and the series in general, there are some admittedly slight problems I have with it, and one of them is the inventory system. There is no party-wide inventory system in this game. Each party member has their own inventory, and it gets fairly messy as you progress through the game. If you're feeling obsessive like I am, you can hand over items to the same character until you reorder them to where your armor is on top and you have items on the bottom, which makes managing your inventory throughout the game much easier. Maybe in the remaster they'll offer us a party-wide inventory system like in Suikoden 2. The second problem is that there's a lot of story segments in this game where you have to bring mandatory party members into your party. For example, in the final battle you have to bring Victor and Flick along, and you always have your main character, so that's 3 slots taken up. And maybe they couldn't code some sort of convoy system like Suikoden 2, or maybe they just didn't think about it, but with a large roster of over 70 characters to choose, it's disappointing that you can't experiment with different party builds in the endgame. The third and final problem is the translation. The translation in this game is a little spotty in some areas, and while it's not nearly as bad as in Suikoden 2, it was a little confusing talking to Matthew for the first time, and he tells you he's a talented military surgeon, and as a kid I thought to myself, oh, you're a doctor? But no, you're a strategist, you're doing strategy things. And I'm being nitpicky just for the sake of this review retrospective of this video thing I'm doing. Back in the day, games didn't have the best translation when it came to role-playing games, and I love this game, and honestly, the criticism I list doesn't kill any of the fun out of the game for me, but hopefully when the remaster comes out, they'll fix some of these issues. And that's it for this video. Just leaving this small section here to say that if you made it all the way to the end, thanks. I hope you got some sort of entertainment out of my first attempt at doing a retrospective review, but for now, thank you so much for watching and take care of yourselves.